So once upon a time, I was in my 20s and I was doing a tour from, I lived on the East Coast and I was touring California for the first time. I remember being really intimidated, thinking these people are so much more evolved than the New Yorkers I just came from. And are, are they going to really, have anything of, am I going to be able to give them anything of value? Was the insecurity. And what right do I have to do this? I have no degrees. And so I was giving a house concert, and at that time, my concerts were divided into like funny songs, improv songs, and then I would sort of transition into what I would call the musical healing circle. And I would invite people to get into the center of a circle and tell me something that they're grappling with, that they want some healing about. And then I would invite them to lie down on pillows, usually comfy, and people who wanted to would come around, lay their hands on the person, and I would, at that time, I would channel a song for that person's healing journey. So I did it in Santa Cruz, and this woman said, I'm not sure there's anything I need to heal, but it is my birthday today, and I would love for you to honor me with a channeled song. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I started singing. She started crying, and I kept on singing, and she kept on crying. And I could see that there was joy in her tears, that it was like a religious, ecstatic experience she was having. So I kept on singing, and she kept on crying. And it seemed like when I gauged the room, everybody was loving it, except one person, the woman whose house me and my friend were staying at, who hosted the concert. She got up, she lit sage, and she started going around the circle with sage, and she didn't look like a happy camper. I was very kind of like, that's interesting, but I kept going on until my intuition said enough. So that night, my friend and I went out for dinner with the birthday girl and her friends, and we talked about it. It was such a great experience for all of us. And the next morning, we got up and got a phone call from the host, the one with the sage. And she said, "How dare you? You are not qualified to do this level of work." That woman was reliving a sexual trauma. She was in her abuse, and you let it go on so long. That was so inappropriate. You should not be doing this work. So I stopped breathing, and I put her on speakerphone, and I got my friend Steven over, and he was listening to this monologue and watching me shake. And he started whispering in my ear, "It's totally her stuff. Don't take it on. It's total projection. The birthday girl was fine. She's processing her own pain. It has nothing to do with you. She's speaking up in a way that she needs to about something from her history that has nothing to do with what happened last night. Don't take it on. Don't blame yourself. You're an angel. Remember, you're an angel." So at the time, I was so steeped in self-doubt and self-criticism that my friend's truth-telling didn't hold much weight, even though if intellectually I understood it. I mean, I had living proof. I was with this birthday girl. It had nothing to do with sexual trauma, but it activated intense doubt. I questioned whether I should be doing healing work with people. Maybe I should go back to college and get a degree in psychology, and I need credentials in order to, and all of that was coming up for me. And I went home, and this was before emails, right? This is before, so people would send me letters of appreciation, and I kept them in a file. basically fan mail. And I took about 20 letters, I put them all over the floor, and then I wrote, "Dear Scott, you suck. You should throw in the towel," right? And I put that amongst them. And I just started to see where my attention went. I imagined that somebody wrote that, not me, but somebody wrote that. That woman wrote that. And like, let's say there's like 19 letters of appreciation and one letter of negativity. Which one do I gravitate? Which one do I try to fix? Which one do I use to beat myself up with? And that's been the lesson of a lifetime. You know, do I want to treat other people's projections and opinions as if they defined me? Sometimes people say, "Scott, you're a genius." And I find that just as much of a projection, as much of a non-helpful thing as when somebody says, "Scott, you're, narcissistic son of a bit," whatever. So they say, I don't know who said this first, credit and blame smell the same. Praise and blame smell the same. It's all just our projections. When we do that to people, when we call them names, we're judging them. "Scott, you're a genius" is just as much a judgment as "Scott, you're adorable." The key word is "Scott, you are." You're telling somebody what you think they are. Nobody really exists here. We're not people. So I am learning to say to somebody like Scott, "Scott, I feel really touched by your gift. It stirs something in me that makes me feel more glad to be alive." So that says my experience, not what I think Scott is. And that's been infinitely valuable in my relationships to switch that, to transition that. But that's a little side dish. So let me finish the story. 20 years later, I was back in Santa Cruz, where this healing circle had happened. And I was giving a talk at a Unity church. And I was recalling the story to illustrate that I have been worshiping my inner critic more than God's love. And that it's really helpful to be brutally and radically honest with yourself. How much time do you spend in critical condition, thinking of what's wrong with the world, what's wrong with you, what's wrong with your meditation practice, what's wrong? That's what I call the inner critic. So I was telling the story, and a woman popped out of her chair and totally did the inappropriate thing to do when somebody's giving a sermon at a church. She stopped me dead in my tracks. And she said, "That was me! I was the birthday girl!" And yes, you're right. It was really a great experience. So that was fun. And then we went to lunch, and it was 20 years later. She was in her 40s, and we shared our stories together. So the moral of this is just be aware of what you're worshiping. You get what you worship. You get more of it. And when you are believing that inner criticism is of value to you, in a sense, you're worshiping it. You're worshiping negative thinking. And maybe your ego actually thinks that it's being humble, because that's what humility is to the ego. It's shaming yourself, chastising yourself, whipping yourself. God is great and I suck. It's not a workable solution. How much fun is that? Great story, isn't it?